In a world of 350 billion movie podcasts, two chumps have decided that now is the time for cult movies to engage in combat. Disagreements will be had, blood may be spilled, and voiceover artists most definitely will not be paid. This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to Cult Film Face-Off, episode 52. With me, as always, is Chet Roivas.
Hello.
And I am Nick Leonard. First of all, big thanks to Rob McCarthy for suggesting that we pair these two films together for this episode. So, this episode, we're going to be looking at two vampire films from 1987. It's Bigelow versus Schumacher. It's David versus Jesse. We are, of course, going to be talking about The Lost Boys versus Near Dark. First out of the gate, released in the summer of 1987, is The Lost Boys, directed by Joel Schumacher. A mother and her two sons, Sam and Mike, moved to a small coastal town in California. The missing person quota is unusually high, and rumours abound regarding the town being a haven for vampires. It's up to two local vampire hunters and the young brother Sam to find and destroy the lead vampire, the Lost Boys.
Michael and Sam have just moved to Santa Carla, California. They're about to discover its secret.
Notice anything unusual about Santa Carla yet?
No. It's a pretty cool place. If you're a Martian.
Or a vampire.
So, The Lost Boys, okay, obviously you've seen it dozens of times.
Yes.
What do you think about it, watching it in this day and age?
Well, one of the good things about this episode, the timing of this episode suggestion, is that my local art house that has a 35mm projector was showing The Lost Boys. So I watched it 5 nights ago, in glorious 35mm film. I can't tell you that was the best possible way to see it. I didn't realise when I sat down, as soon as it started, I thought, I haven't seen this since I was a kid, because this is one of my favourite films when I was a kid. But I think the window between me watching Star Wars and me watching RoboCop was quite small, so it slotted in that very small window of time. So I must have loved this film for months and then just thought this is a kid's film, and then moved on to, RoboCop, Die Hard, etc. So I hadn't seen it in a very long time. I think it stands up much better than I thought it was going to. Did you not agree?
No.
Oh, right, you were looking at me like...
No. That's actually a face of concentration.
I thought you were looking at me like...
I was intrigued. I mean, the last time I saw this film on the big screen. I didn't see it. I'd love to have seen a 35mm. It wasn't a 35mm, but it was on the big screen, and it was at Somerset House in London. Somerset House is like it does a huge open screen, in the outside, and it does these it's very, very cleverly curated double bills of films over the summer. And the double bill that The Lost Boys appeared on was Let the Right One In and then The Lost Boys, which is a fucking fantastic double bill. Yeah. So it wasn't so long ago. I'd seen this I think it's probably about 7 or 8 years ago. But 7 or 8 years still is still
quite a
chunk of time. But no, I agree that this has aged extremely well.
Yeah, I was expecting to look at it and just think, oh god, how did I ever like this? It's really just hasn't held up well at all. I mean, I watched it, a glorious 35mm print with a bunch of people at a late night showing who were all quite drunk, and it was a perfect environment. But I don't remember as a kid. I mean, it's pretty funny. I mean, it's in a broad, very sitcom-y way, but it's still, there are laughs in it.
I was surprised at how much of it is played for gags. Yeah, I think when you're a kid, a lot of it you don't get those subtleties.
No, it's very true. Yeah, that surprised me. In terms of negatives, there's no characterization in this film. That's the one thing that really shocked me. I was constantly wanting to know more about all of these characters. I mean, I think the acting's superb. Diane Wiest is incapable of doing anything that's not Oscar caliber.
She's great. And Edward Herrmann as Max is fucking great as well.
You can't argue that it's not a great. I don't know. Would you say that these? I mean, I'm curious to ask this about both of these films. Do you think these are going to continue to prevail once people who were alive when they came out? Because
I'm concerned about this because I asked some people at work who are much younger, and they'd not only had never seen it, but they'd never heard of the Lost Boys.
That's so funny.
And that fucking worries me.
We went for dinner before we went to the cinema, and we were chatting to the maitre d' of the restaurant, and he was like, "Yeah, what are you talking about?" Like he's only about 5 or 6 years younger than us, but he was like, "I've never heard of it."
I mean, I spoke to people at work about it, and the people I work with are really into music and film and television, and they were just like, and a couple of them just. Yeah.
What the fuck's that?
The young'uns. What is it?
Right.
Like, I'm like, yeah. Before Kiefer Sutherland was in 24, he was fucking cool and very sexy. I mean, I was surprised at. I always remember it just being there being way more dialogue between Michael and David, and really there's hardly anything said.
To be honest, I felt like a criticism that's often levelled at movies. You know, I've noticed it throughout my life when people compare full-length movies and say this is like a trailer. I really felt like this was kind of like a trailer because it was so bitty, and there wasn't. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of as engaged as I was. If I was a newcomer to this, I don't know whether I'd engage with it at all because it feels quite.
If you haven't got that all-powerful nostalgia,
I don't.
Which means you're invested from the off. You just want to fucking. You just want it to flow over you.
Yeah.
You're not demanding anything of watching The Lost Boys because as soon as it starts and as soon as the music, and it still has got an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. You have to. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, it is wall-to-wall music for the first half.
Great music, but what I felt about it is that it felt so much like a music video.
Yeah, especially. I mean, when he drinks the.
Oh my god!
And then when they're sexy, it's like, wow, this is properly like an 80s music video.
I think what this does, this is one of those films that really encapsulates everything that was great about the excesses of the 80s.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, down to the way the film was made, because the way I could best describe this is with an oxymoron. It's a really brilliantly orchestrated fucking mess, because originally it was supposed to be the Goonies with vampires. Schumacher wanted to go darker. The studio didn't want to go quite in his direction, so it was rewritten multiple times. I mean, it's the kind of film that could have been 10 different things, but instead it's kind of 10 things at once. And the fact that he managed to marshal that into something that's coherent enough and entertaining enough, I think it's testament to Joel Schumacher, who sometimes gets sidelined. I mean, I think that orchestrating this and making something this coherent out of it, I think is a skill in itself, an underrated skill.
I mean, this is Joel Schumacher. Some of his I mean, I love Falling Down. I mean, Falling Down is just a fantastic film. But this is him. I mean, this is a very flamboyant film. You know, he's a flamboyant director.
Yeah, totally.
You know, visuals wise and cinematography wise, it's a great film to look at. Talking about things that I did not remember. I did not remember that saxophone player.
What? How could you not remember him?
When I was a kid, I didn't remember that saxophone player.
I mean, I suppose in recent years he's been one of those people that, you know, that's it. Whenever I saw that gig scene when I was a kid, I thought they've taken some pop group song and they've performed it and they've given it to this guy.
It's his song.
It's his song. Yeah, I was like,
Tim Capello.
That's his name.
Tim Capello, and he was Tina Turner's go-to sax man. I just can't believe I completely forgot about it.
No, I mean,
it's a wonder. It really is a wonder. The campfire mass attack is a really good sequence. That is a gritty horror sequence that's done like an amazing music video.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's just like flashes of crimson blood, and it feels like it's in another planet, and it's kind of like a dust bowl of sand and oranges.
And rather than biting on the neck, there's that bit where he just bites into his skull.
And then it's just, exactly. Yeah. And there's arterial blood, and it's just like, I would like more of that, but the film's not about that. It gives you a tease of that, and then it's all. I mean, I actually forgot. You know, when I pictured The Lost Boys, I pictured that the whole initiation of Michael into the gang. There was more kind of there was more dialogue between Michael and David, and there wasn't. And the gang are literally mute. The gang are just like they laugh. Yeah. They go, and there really is no character in that gang. And what it's all about is it's about the Frog Brothers, and it's about the Frog Brothers and Sam. And it's funny because as you're a kid, you completely identify with Sam and the Frog Brothers. And watching it now, I mean, I was just going, fuck, I'm like way older than like Kiefer Sutherland and the vampires. I'm way older than them. And that's a weird thing.
That's when I was reading up on this movie, just to find anything interesting. Diane Wiest was 39 when she made this. Exactly.
Fuck.
She was 39 years old, which is more or less.
That scares the shit out of me.
No, do you know what I mean? But that's something I'm annoyed they didn't touch upon more. The idea that she's kind of this burnt out hippie, and a lot of the old sort of that it's sort of all of these kids are like the children of like burnt out old hippies. I thought, well, it's pointless saying that I wish it went into anything more, because it doesn't really go into anything at all. It's just a sort of it's a Hollywood entertainment that I think really works, but I am not convinced on its ability to impress or engage.
Or entice new viewers.
Yeah, I don't think.
And also, her grandfather is great. I mean, I can, Bernard Hughes as the taxidermist grandpa is priceless. He's great. It's extremely entertaining, and the way it ramps up everything to that last 20-minute sequence. I mean, all of those deaths are so well put together. They're really peacockish. I mean, they really show off. They're really showy. They're really excessive. And I mean, the film's best zinger got completely ruined for me when I first rented this movie when I was a kid. I remember really vividly going to Popeye's video shop in Bromley, and the two cliquey teenagers that were working there, they had a whiteboard where they would write their top sort of 5 films of the week. And I remember Lost Boys being a permanent fixture every week at that place. And I picked it up and kind of, wanted to rent it. And then the guy behind the counter looked at his mate and he just went, "Death by Stereo."
Oh, no.
I was like, you dick.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really good fun. I don't think it's any more than that. I mean, the way I felt when I walked out, I was like, that is about as great and iconic as a 3-star movie can get. Because I don't think, I mean, it's all surface, it's just entertainment. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, or I don't think that it should be undervalued, but
Kiefer Sutherland, I mean, this is a time when, like, he'd done some really, Stand By Me, he was extremely menacing, and even though he doesn't get to say a lot, he exudes sleazy menace. I mean, he's brilliant in it, and you can see he was destined to go on to do massive things.
I think everyone's great in it. I mean, when I was a kid, I always thought Jason Patric was an annoying pretty boy, but the part doesn't really demand anything more of him. So I mean,
the part demands him to be a vulnerable Jim Morrison knockoff.
Yeah, right. I mean, I laughed at the funny bits. I thought, I mean, I don't know if there's...
Also, I thought the sequence is done really well. The dinner sequence when Max is having dinner is brilliant. Yeah, I mean, the dynamic with Edgar Allan Frog, sorry. They're great. Corey
Feldman, yeah.
Corey Feldman is brilliant in it. Corey Haim and Feldman are just great in it. You really realise now just how good they were as child actors when you look at how bad some child actors are now. And they're great. The soundtrack. I mean, I forgot the soundtrack had Run DMC in it. I knew it had In Excess and Echo and the Bunnymen. It was quite nice to have Run DMC played. I'd forgotten about that. But it's just a wall to wall. It's a great soundtrack.
Run DMC in it?
Yeah. The Run DMC is playing just before the campfire mass attack.
I know that the Aerosmith original was playing. I didn't realise it was the Run DMC and Aerosmith mashup. I thought it was the original Aerosmith song.
I'm pretty sure it's Run DMC versus Aerosmith.
Really? There was no rapping on it, was there? Okay, I can't remember. I thought it was just Walk This Way by Aerosmith.
99% sure it's got Run DMC because there's rapping in it, so it's Run DMC.
It's satisfying as well. I like the fact that it answers questions. I mean, I spent the whole first half of the movie just thinking, why are they even after Michael? Why is he involved? Why are they sort of chasing him? And it was because it was going to be Star's first kill. Yeah. So I thought, okay, great. At least they've had the fucking decency to elaborate on that.
I'd completely forgotten about that whole introductory credit sequence where they're going around the boardwalk showing the missing kid pictures.
That's right,
it's done brilliant. It's just a brilliant opener.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed seeing it. I mean, nostalgia's a motherfucker, but
it is, and it's something I could quite happily revisit every 5 years. No worries.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's a really, really excellent 3-star movie, but no more than that.
I really enjoyed it. I'd go back to it. It is what it is. It's all the excesses of the 80s for the MTV generation, and it looks great. There's no deeper meaning there. It's just entertaining. It rattles along 90 minutes. Very enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, let's crack on then and have a look at Near Dark, which came out 3 months later in 1987. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow. A Midwestern shipboat reluctantly joins a group of travelling vampires after he falls in love with one of their undead brood. Near Dark.
I'm gonna separate your head from your shoulders.
Do it fast.
All right.
The time's roll. No! You might as well just kill me then, too.
Caleb Colton no longer belongs to our world.
We'll give him a week, see if we can call him one of us.
He belongs to hers.
But you have to learn to kill.
He belongs to theirs.
I don't want to kill.
He makes a kill tonight.
And they all belong to the night.
It's 3 hours short for a bus ticket home. You help me out?
What do you want?
Believe me, I told you.
Just don't think of it as killing.
Evening.
Don't think at all. It's just something that you do night after night. It's only ever a question of how.
You nervous? I would be too if I were you. Near Dark.
The bigger boys falling in with control. Check out time.
So Near Dark, I know you've seen Near Dark because you've definitely mentioned it to me in the past.
Yeah, I saw it about as early as I could have seen it. I saw it on home video, so it would have been 88, 89.
Yeah. And when's the last time you saw it?
Probably not since around then again. Weirdly enough, I thought I'd seen it more recently because that's a film, again, that I absolutely loved. I think I loved Near Dark more than any movie when I saw it, but again, that window was quite short before I sort of moved on to other stuff. But it's a slighter film than I recall. It struck me as something that would be, if today, it would be better as a short film. There's not a lot in it. And I really realised halfway through it's incredibly hard to be fair. I mean, in both of these cases, 95% of movies do not age. They do not age well. Once the people who were around when they were made are no longer, the film is no longer. I think that's true of both of these movies, but it was more pronounced in this case. I think primarily because genre mashups are so unbelievably prevalent now. And back then I was just like, whoa, it's a western, it's a vampire, but it's like a vampire movie, but they've kind of done it in this kind of 80s, gritty for the 80s, cop movie kind of. And it doesn't have any of the supernatural elements, they don't have fangs. And it completely blew me away when I was a kid. But genre mashups are everywhere now, so that doesn't it doesn't skate on that alone. And I think everything these days is a procedural. So I had so many questions about those vampires in Near Dark, about what they were doing, and I feel like a million filmmakers have answered all of those questions subsequently with films that they've made that were all inspired by Near Dark. It's an integral piece of the puzzle.
But you feel that other people have taken the concept.
I feel like, for example, when they're just killing people indiscriminately, and it's supposed to obviously be a metaphor for drugs. They're nocturnal drug addicts, essentially. They're just wasting people, and I'm like, but you need that blood. Why are you just sort of just offing people and then just letting killing people and then not taking the blood out, and then they kill the guy that runs the bar? And I'm like. And there's also a million other questions that I had that I feel like people who were inspired by Near Dark have answered with their films. So I couldn't be fair to this on its own terms as much as I tried. I did enjoy it, but it's not the great film that I think it was, 20 years ago.
That's interesting.
What did you?
Well, this is the first time I've seen Near Dark.
Oh fuck! I had no idea. I
had caught probably the last 2.5-3 minutes of that bar sequence on television when I was about 14.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And never was able to, didn't even, it wasn't until many, many years later and reading an article in a film magazine where I saw the stills of the pictures and saw Bill Paxton, was like, oh fuck, that's the film.
Yeah, right.
But never got around to seeing it. I was fucking pumped to see Near Dark. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great film.
Oh, good. Okay.
I think it's interesting on a lot of levels. I mean, the cast are all brilliant. I mean, some more brilliant than others. I mean, especially good is Paxton, Henriksen, and Goldstein. I mean, they're fucking amazing. I mean, they've just finished. They're all hot off finishing Aliens and then turning up in this and being all together in Near Dark. May, is it May? What's the?
I think that's her name.
It is May, yeah. May she looks great, but sometimes she hasn't got the chops of the other vampires.
Yeah, I mean, she does.
She looks amazing. I mean, that whole introductory sequence with her and Caleb, and I just think, Bigelow is just a great director because there is just a very slight nuance where she looks at him. She looks at him as as a partner, and then just looks at him as food. And it's just a really lovely moment. And Tangerine Dream comes in. I mean, Tangerine Dream. I mean, I'm loving the fact that we've watched two films, more or less, in a very, two films very recently that have great Tangerine Dream soundtracks. I loved it in Sorcerer, and maybe loved it even more in this.
Did you?
It was a great soundtrack.
I thought it was intermittently very effective, but a lot of the pieces I felt could have soundtracked anything: an action comedy, a beer commercial, an action movie.
I thought it was very dreamy when it needed to be dreamy, and then when it was action based, it was more techie and a bit more throbbing when they're in the Winnebago hurtling around the Dust Bowl.
I thought it was kind of a missed opportunity. I didn't think it added to the atmosphere, but I mean, obviously that's just. You didn't agree with that?
No, I really thought it was very effective. I mean, Bill Paxton is fucking great. I mean, he steals every scene that he's in. He's this redneck, cock of the walk, swaggering around with a big dose of crazy. He's just fucking great. And some of his one-lines are brilliant as well. I mean, when they have that bar sequence, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, saying that, why they're just killing people. It's just a fucking great action sequence.
It is.
It's really well put together, and it's very unsettling, and it's done with just the right amount of brutality and comedy.
I totally agree with that. I think my problem is that at the moment, in this particular moment in time, movies are almost all procedurals in some way. There's a surfeit of information, and this is more content to just fucking lay back, be stylish.
Because it's late 80s. Yeah, that's what it's all about. That decade's all about that.
I found myself for some reason unable. I just felt like there was too many questions that I had. I mean, I like the way that it starts, kind of in the opposite way to The Lost Boys, because the first conversation is about. It's kind of like an existential crisis, because May says, I'm still going to be here in a billion years, and so there's a slight sadness to it. There's no sadness in The Lost Boys, because the vampires in The Lost Boys are not reflective. They like being nocturnal. They like being feared. They like feeding. They like everything. There's no downside to being a vampire.
No.
This is a kind of weary. I like the fact that it's a weary group of people who are...
But also as a family unit. Yeah, that's what's so... what makes it extremely interesting as well is the dynamic with them as being a family.
Yeah. But the oldest person might be the kid.
Well, yeah. Homer. What was interesting is the way that they all... the way that they interact with their food is very interesting, because obviously humans... at the end of the day, they end up being their prey. So you've got Severin... is in the bar, and he likes doing the whole macho fucking squaring up to people and letting guys try and fight back at him. That's what he's getting his kicks off of. And then you've got Diamondback, who is the matriarch of the family, and she just basically likes getting Jesse a bit jealous, and then being flirtatious. And then you've got May, who's kind of just very sort of emotional and humanising it, and kind of. I don't think she's getting any joy out of the killing at all. She's far more interested in being this teenager who's going to break off and have a relationship. That's just a fucking great dynamic. What's interesting is how fucking dirty and dishevelled they're looking. I mean, they've been around for 1,000 years. You think you'd have a fucking shower, right?
Yeah, really. They are living in a car, to be fair.
I mean, it's very... I've read that apparently Bigelow really wanted to make a Western, and this was her kind of compromise. Her compromise was, I'll make Near Dark, but I'll have these massive Western like motifs and this feeling about it. I mean, there's a brilliant sequence which is like a Bonnie and Clyde shootout.
That's the best scene. That's a totally iconic, totally ingenious scene.
It's just brilliant, and the fact is, it's not about the bullets hitting them. It's about the shades of light coming in and their skin immediately kind of bursting into flames. With the vampires in the Lost Boys, they kind of had like, when we can't be killed, they were really cocksure, where there was a fallibility to these vampires which made it really way more human. And the fact they didn't have fangs, it just made it far more believable.
I remember
as a modern take on vampires.
I agree. I mean, I remember feeling that way when I saw it as a kid. I just thought, here when the drug metaphor didn't work for me because they weren't.
Well, it was a bit too obvious. I mean, the whole set. They didn't need to have the sequence with the police officer. What do you want, kid? What do you want?
There were instances of very lazy writing. Why was a detective in a fucking a bus station at 2:00 in the morning? That scene where two ladies pull over and it's Bill Paxton trying to, hey, do you want to go to party? I was like, this is pretty cheeseball shit. So there's just things that really, really rubbed me up the wrong way this time. I think its place in history is certain, because I know I remember how seismic or unusual, how completely different it felt when I was a kid. Today, I feel like every issue I have with it has been dealt with by filmmakers who are inspired by it. I feel like I've seen so many films where the drug metaphor is pushed a bit further, or realism is even more extreme, or there's even more information about the characters. And the fact that it's the standard 80s trope of having a slightly dumbass in the lead role, and you kind of just sort of. I mean, the other thing that doesn't work is that. How easily, if it is a drug metaphor, the fact that he can just take them in a garage and give them a transfusion and it's all over.
That was daft.
Yeah.
I really felt disappointed with that because so much of it was being quite clever and moving away from being. I mean, there's so many dumb cliches with the vampire mythology in film, Yeah. I thought he was really moving away to be something a bit more intelligent about that.
Well,
that was going to be a serious problem that he'd have to kind of make a decision of what was he going to... He's going to try and live like that life and go back with his family, or is he going to just stay out on the road with them? I thought that was a real letdown.
Yeah, and I just thought that's a really interesting idea. Like, how are they going to deal... How is she, in particular, going to deal with knowing that she's going to live forever, suddenly not... What would have happened if the other characters, had they not died, would have known that there was a possibility that they could have a blood transfusion that would fix everything? Again, these are things. I think this is like The Lost Boys. It's kind of all surfaced in a very, very 80s way. Yeah. It didn't stand up for me, but again, like our last episode, I think expectations play a really, really fundamental part because I remember how much I loved.
Yeah. I had zero expectations. With this film, and it does play a huge part. Nostalgia plays a huge part. I had no nostalgia in this film,
and it's still held up.
And it's still held up. Absolutely.
I mean, the central conceit is fairly similar in that can the lead character fight the urge to kill?
Yes, exactly that. Right, but just to go back to the whole drugs analogy that these two films have, because it's very both films, the characters are going out at night, they can't go in the day, it's all about the nightlife culture and drug culture. Caleb is in fucking physical agony and pain, whereas Michael's he sweats a bit, then he's like, I'm flying outside of the house. Yeah. It's done way more for humour, and Near Dark is rooted, at times, to be far more serious. So the parable on drug culture, I mean, how his suffering is how some, is far more in line with somebody having withdrawal and suffering and looking terrible, whereas Michael never really looks that terrible. He looks a bit sweaty and looks a bit wide-eyed, but he doesn't look in agony like Caleb does. But there are daft things. The blood transfusion is a daft thing to have done.
Yeah.
It really takes the whole, right, so you can just do that and then you're not a vampire again.
Yeah. But I mean, it would have been interesting if it dealt with that on some level, but it didn't. I mean, he was happy.
He could just say to her, well, I just had this blood transfusion. Do you want to just come around to my garage? And my dad, who normally wears really high-waisted trousers when he's in Charles Band films, he can sort you out.
Yeah, it's silly, and that's where it kind of falls down as an analogy. But I mean, as an entertainment, I think it's fine. I just don't think. I honestly feel like my opinion of this has been hampered by the fact that it's so influential that every vampire film, I was like, well, why don't they find a way to store the blood? Why don't they? All of these things I feel like have been answered in subsequent movies. I was just asking questions about how these people live, and I feel like other people have those questions and they've made their own movies, but. There's no denying its place in history. I just was surprised at how. Again, I think both of these movies aren't going to be around in 100 years' time.
I mean, I'm really glad. I'm very glad for watching Near Dark, and I think it's a great film. I think it is very of its time, and I feel sorry for it that it came out the same year as The Lost Boys, which stole all of its thunder.
Yeah.
So I would urge anybody listen to the podcast. Well, we've completely fucked it in terms of spoiling the film for you. But I would just heartily recommend finding Near Dark. And Near Dark, I think, is aged better than The Lost Boys. I mean, there's more in it in terms of being a bit more astute, if that's the right way to put it. I mean, there is just a deeper layer here than there is on The Lost Boys. The Lost Boys is very, very, is all about look and all about feel and all about flamboyancy, whereas Near Dark's just more of an adult affair. I was gripped from beginning to end. There were some daft things in there, but I forgave it. It's 1987. It's full of fucking daft things in films from 1987.
Yeah, I suppose it should be commended for being as non-daft as it was for most of the time.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's only daft for a quite small section.
Yeah,
there are a couple of scenes. The rest of it is done. It takes itself very seriously, and I respect that because it's not a comedy.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's nice to hear that it worked for you. I think. Again,
and she's a great director. Kathryn Bigelow is a great director.
There's absolutely no question of that. Perhaps Expectations shot me in the backside, and a classic that I remember revering like nothing else.
But that's what happens when you've got a relationship with a film and you haven't seen it.
Yeah, but I mean,
on retrospect, you think it's going to have this huge effect, and you go, oh, well, I thought, you know, rose-tinted glasses and kind of how things hit you when you were like 15 or 16.
Yeah, and I also think I saw Near Dark a lot more than I watched Lost Boys, so I think it's more familiar. Although it's been a similar amount of time. I haven't seen it in a long time. But I mean, for the second episode in a row, at this point I'm not sure where I'm going. So where are you going?
There's arguments for both of them.
I think in different ways they've both been as influential as each other.
I think they're very important films, and I don't want them to be forgotten. I really don't want them to be forgotten in 100 years. That concerns me, because there's a lot of good in both of these films.
I agree. I mean,
but they're so different in tone. But they focus on the same. The vampire is the central conceit, but they do it in completely different ways, and they actually really nail it in the ways that they do it. They're both very different how they're telling those stories, but they absolutely, in terms of entertainment, they're both totally entertaining and well executed.
So which one's better?
I've got one part of me that goes, well, it's Lost Boys. It's the film that you grew up with and watched dozens of times. I've just discovered Near Dark, and it's great, and I could probably watch that in a month's time, watch it again quite easily. And Lost Boys, I can do it. I don't need to watch that for another few years. But which is better? I find that this is an extremely hard one to call.
So what should we do? Do we call it the Ostinator?
I think we need to call the Ostinator, yeah.
Oh boy, okay. Okay, right, well, okay, we can't decide, so we are going to go to the Ostinator.
Yeah, for me, it's Loggerheads.
Okay, let's go.
Oh shit, we got a tiebreaker.
Ostinator, it's Cult Film Face Off. Once again, we are at complete loggerheads, and we need you to pick a victor from this week's films. We have Near Dark versus The Lost Boys. Which way are you going?
Okay, Cult Film Face Off, Ostinator here with the decisions. Two fantastically cult, cheesy vampire flicks from the mid to late 80s. Love both of them. However, personally, my preference lies with The Lost Boys. Classic performances, some classic scenes, from the Chinese maggots noodles to the bathtub scene. Just fantastic. And the cherry on top for me is the compelling soundtrack, the "Thou shalt not kill" refrain that just adds a really nice, haunting tone throughout. However, Near Dark, fantastic. The whole concept of a Western vampire film has been done before, but I don't believe it had been done previously. Kathryn Bigelow shot really nicely, obviously before she'd won her Oscar. I understand why there's a dilemma on this one, but personally, for pure nostalgia reasons, I've got to give it to The Lost Boys. Have a great one, guys. All the best. Ostinator out.
Eliminator with the Ostinator.
So, that was the final verdict.
Oh, I wonder what he chose. He probably almost certainly chose Near Dark, right?
Oh, so what do you think? You think Near Dark?
If I was asked that question,
you're banking on him seeing Near Dark.
He would have seen Near Dark, I'm sure.
You probably thought? Do you think I saw it?
Yeah, I did.
Exactly.
Actually. Okay. Well, you know the answer. So there we go. That's whatever Austin just said.
Okay. Well, look, we abide by the Ostinator. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter. iTunes reviews really do help, and also get involved. You know, if you agree or disagree with what we've been chatting about, then get your social on and tweet and Facebook, and also suggestions for future episodes. We've got a website, and you can do everything from the website, whether it's downloading and listening or checking out the slate. All of our historical episodes on there, as well as all of our future episode pairings as well. That's all there is for me. Ciao, bless.
Thanks for listening. See you later.
Ciao, man.
Cult Film Face Off.
I had just completed making a film called Stand By Me, which was the first job I had in the United States. And I had done another job called At Close Range, which Sean Penn helped me get a small part in. It was his film, and Joel Schumacher had seen a close-up at the very end of the film of me watching Sean Penn go into a courtroom. And I had black hair at the time. It's a film that I really don't resemble what I normally look like on any level. But Joel saw that close-up and said, oh, I'd like to see him for this film. And he had me come in, and we had a reading, and we got on very well.
He can do almost anything, because he's a born character actor, and he was at 18. And you can see it in Lost Boys, because he has the least amount of dialogue of anyone in the movie, but his presence is extraordinary. The minute he shows up on screen, you just go, boom, you know, who is this guy?
My character happened to have the kind of really cool lines at the end of a scene. You know, he'd have the one great line. And so I'm deeply grateful to Joel for those.
I don't know if that's... fuck it. A Midwestern shitpoke reluctantly joins a group of travelling vampires after he falls in love with one of the undead...
What's a shitpoke?
They're called shitpokes, aren't they?
Are they? Okay, I'll take your word for it. I've never...
But I questioned myself when I read it. I was like, can I call him a shitpoke? Doesn't mean he's like some gay guy. Like, I'm just... Because the literal meaning of a shitpoker would be a gay guy, right? Please don't put this on at the end of the episode.
I was just going to leave it in the...
Just leave it in. Yeah, because they're called shitpokes. You know, like when they're aspiring to be a cattle person. Shitpoke.
Okay, cool.
I don't know, maybe that's not right.
Maybe it is right. Just stick with it. Just own it. Fuck it. Come on. Yeah, it's fine. Let's go with it.
A Midwestern shitpoke... A Midwestern shitpoke reluctantly joins... I think I'm going to get caned for this, right?